We're good, yeah.
Lovely. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Festival of Thrifts Fix It Fortnight. We're Fix It Cafe Bike Fixing at the Star and Shadow Cinema. I'm Lindsay.
I'm Marek, and we're your gifted amateurs once again, tackling more things that
we're trying not to throw away. So this week we're talking about bikes. We get quite a few bikes in to fix it, or we lend a lot of tools out for fix it. Sorts of things we get are tires, brakes, gears, seats, all kinds of things really that people bring bikes in for. When we
pedals missing, brake blocks, knackered brake blocks, rusty. Dan, our camera person here, has been doing a champion job of collecting up bicycles from around the environs. So ones that have been found in hedges, abandoned by students, or just generally chucked out. And this is what me and Lindsay found. This one here. Yeah,
we found this one in the under one of the walkways in Newcastle. So it's an old rally bike. So we're going to look at that later today. So we're going to go through, as we go on, we're going to go through some basic checks on the bikes and look at some tools and maybe do some physical fixing so you get a sense of how to do that. And then you'll probably have seen on the Festival Fifth website, there's absolutely loads of stuff going on. And what we do today alongside the other videos and the other programs and talks that have been running will be archived up onto there, and you can check them there. You can also check out all the other fixes and fails that have happened. If you've been fixing, share those fixes. And, there's little inventors,
noisy toys. There's a few activities you can still get involved in up to the weekend.
So we're going to post up some other videos as well, and this will be archived up on there. So if you want to go through stuff again or ask, as we always say, if you want to ask questions during the session, you can put them in the chat, and they'll get.
We'll do our best to answer them.
We'll do our best to answer them as we go. But if you've got questions later, or you've got questions about fixes and tools, then please do check us out on the Facebook page or send a message through Festival of Thrift. So we're going to start with tools. So we're going to wheel over some tools to here, so you can have a look. We'll come to the right shot here.
Okay.
So are we there? So these are what we want to talk about. Was like the most basic tools. You don't need HDMI couplers. I'm going to take them off the tray. Magically they've got, it's like Alice's game, what was there before? So we've just got what you might basically need to do checks on your bikes. So really the most basic stuff. We've got an adjustable spanner, or you might have, if you've got a spanner set, you normally only need one or two different kinds of spanner for your bike. This is a 15 and maybe a 9 for the smaller parts. Some Allen keys, like an Allen key set. We've just got the
sometimes called hex keys
or hex keys, and then we've got a flat head and a crosshair screwdrivers, which you might need for adjusting the gears, and then a bit of 3-in-1, there's different kinds of lubricants and oils you can use on your bike, but if you don't have those, the basic ones use this to stay away from DW40 and use a 3-in-1 oil.
WD-40 has its uses,
but not for lubricating.
But it's not for lubricating your chain. So what it'll do is it'll free up a rusty chain and it'll get rid of water. But what it won't do is it won't lubricate your chain. It evaporates and leaves a bit of a film on the chain, but that won't lubricate it. So
this is good. It has that satisfying noise when you click it out. Yeah. And then what we've put on here is a bit odd, but sometimes Allen keys. Sometimes your bikes might have been out in the garden, or they might have been in the shed for a while, or if like us you found them out in all weathers, they might have rusted. So when you go to loosen something with the hex key or the Allen key, we just found we've got a bit of extra piping. This is just a bit of copper pipe. You might use that to give yourself a bit more agency when you're trying to turn keys. So that we just put that on the tray, because sometimes you might find something else altogether. But that's the basic set. We've got other tools which we're going to show you as we go through today, that you might want to gather. For instance, like puncture repair kits, and if you need to replace chains, and there's like link couplers and things for cutting cables. But for doing a maintenance check, for just like adjusting things and starting out, this is kind of like a basic little bit of kit that you can go with.
Yeah, that's your base level there. Really.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull out one of the bikes that we found, and we're gonna put that onto a stand.
I was just going to mention this first here.
Oh, the bike that we're going to move my tools while I do that.
This bike is this is how I used to fix bikes when I was a kid, which was like you turn them upside down and you put them on the handlebars, and it's okay, but it doesn't allow you to. It's a lot more convenient working on a bike on a stand the other way up, and especially if you're trying to work with the gears and the brakes. It's very difficult to work with the gears when it's actually sat on top of the gears. So we've made ourselves a little cheap bike stand out of 2 bits of wood and a couple of clamps, which allow us, rather than spending £100 or so on a bike stand, we've got a couple of bits of wood that cost nothing.
So what we've got is we've brought a bike. We've got a bike here that we're actually in the
This is
middle.
another rescue.
It's a rescue bike, and we're in the middle of working through the fixes on it. So we wanted to take you through what you might do to fix up, and check this bike and check that it's safe. Okay.
We've got a little clever trick here as well for our bike stand. Just to mention this, there's a bungee on here. I just wanted to show you this very quickly. Just if we take the bungee off here, you'll see that when the bike's sat on the bike stand, if this moves, then the whole bike becomes unstable and it tilts over. But if you actually put the bungee around there, then it holds the front wheel steady and it stops it. It doesn't stop it from, it's not bolted onto anything, it's just balanced on the block of wood here. So, but that just helps it give it a bit of stability. So it keeps the front wheel steady and it means the bike will stay upright. So we can, we can look at it a little bit easier and it makes it a little bit easier to work on. But it's better to do it with 2 people so one person can keep a good firm grip of the bike when you're trying to do something.
Great. So we've got some questions coming through. We'll feed those in a little while. So we're just going to go through there is a thing called an M check, and which is 32 points that you can go through on your bike. We're going to do a much more basic version of that today, but if you went back through that, you can go to Cycling UK's website. In fact, we're going to be part of something called Dr. Bike, where we're going to be working, doing like kind of bike checks around the east end of Newcastle. People can come to that for free and have a little service of their bike. And that's going to be running over the next month. And
so we'll be posting that up on on the Fix It website and Fix It Facebook. I should say.
Fix It Facebook.
Yeah.
Can't even say the word.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do though here is look at this bike. So we'll look at the line of the bike, and one of the things you can do, of course, is clean it if it's come out in a bad way. But the first thing we're going to do is just check the line of the bike, make sure that everything is streamlined and straight. So your side,
just turn this around just so you can see, get a bit of an idea here. So you see along the line of the bike, you should see if I get that end onto the camera there. Everything sort of lines up really nicely. The back wheel is in line with the frame. It's not tilted off to one side. The saddle is firmly fixed in the middle. That's parallel with the frame. The front wheel sits quite nicely. I mean, I know I've got it on a bungee there, but it actually the forks line up. The forks are perpendicular to the main line of the frame, and the handlebars should be perpendicular as well.
Okay, so the next thing then is to look at the wheels. I have to turn it sideways.
Yeah, so I'll turn it back around again. So which way around? This way.
Yeah, so some of this might seem quite obvious in a way. They were just going through the list of the bikes, but these are the things that you would just check through. So we're looking at the wheels, we're looking at the tread of the tyre, we're looking at to see whether there's enough tread left. If I bring out this wheel here, actually we've got another wheel where sorry, it's surprising things. Yeah, so you can see on the treads beginning to go on here. You can see it's a 2-tone tyre. The cream of the tyre is now showing through on the tread, but actually the quality of the rubber is deteriorating there, so it's beginning to crack. So whilst it's got a bit of grip on it, actually the next thing to do with this bike is actually to get new tyres for the top. So you can just see the quality. This one's not bad actually. It's got quite a bit of grip on it. And someone was actually asking in the chat if there's a way round that tyres go on, like which way. Ken is asking if there's a way that
there is quite often the manufacturers. I'm not sure if we'll be able to see it, but quite often there's a little direction pointer that tells you which way. It'll say rotation, and there'll be an arrow. And I'm pretty sure
the tread. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this one's got it on. There normally should be if there's a way round. I can't quite see because there's not enough light.
It's quite weird in theatre.
But I happen to know from looking earlier on at this tyre that this one's on back to front. So even though the rotation, the wheel's going around this way, the arrow is pointing the other way. So somebody's put the tyre on the front of this bike, or put the wheel on the wrong way around. Is the other thing.
So and actually the tyre, the tyre has quite a lot of information on it. We were going to say it later, but actually I'll just point out that the air pressure that you need to put, the amount of air pressure when you're pumping up a tyre is written on the tyre, as well as the size of the tyre if you need to replace it. So there's lots of really useful information written on the tyre. And what I do, because I'm not very good with numbers, is I always photograph the side of the tyre if I have to go into the shop to buy something or pick something up, so I've got something to reference it from. So that's the tyre there. The other thing to look at in the tyres is the nuts. So do the nuts need tightening up on the wheels? So are they firm and are they in place? And you might find a more modern bike. I'm going to bring another bike out. Lots of bikes here today.
Okay. I'm just going to
I'll just move this.
move that one out of the way there. Yeah. Okay. So we'll just place this one here, just where you can see it. But in fact, I'll turn it around so you can face the front.
Sorry, this is a bit.
Right. So this one has the quick release hubs on here, and it has skewers on the inside. So in order to take the wheel out of this one, you would undo that, and you should be able to get the nut on the other side. Oops, I'm caught up in here. And then you can take the wheel out. I'm not going to take it out on this one, but you need to be, in order to put these on the right way, you need to tighten that up. So in order to put them on so they're tight enough, so you tighten it so it just starts to give a bit of resistance about just as you get past the midway point. So when you actually push it on, it's quite firmly attached. So you should make sure that your wheels sitting in between the two forks, equidistant between the two forks on there. So that's the skewers. The skewers can come out as well as a little thin hole that goes through the middle of the bike hub, and you can take those out. So I'll pull this one off really, just
yeah. Okay, so back to our other bike here. So we've got the other thing to look at on the wheels is of course the spokes. So are the spokes in good nick? And
does it have all of it?
Does it have all the spokes? Are there any missing? You can replace spokes, but you have to take the whole wheel off and the tire and stuff like that, because you've got to get to the spokes. And then there's a tool called
it's a spoke spanner.
Spoke spanner.
Yeah.
So if you need to tighten spokes if they need working on, so that's basically your wheels.
Spokey dokey.
Spokey, not spokey dokey. They're just brilliant things that make your bikes sound fantastic. So the next thing is your seat and handlebars. So is the seat steady?
Right, if I hold on to this end here,
holding onto the bike, if I move this, the seat is solid. If it wasn't solid, again, it's the same nut size, I think, as the wheel, but you can tighten up the nuts in there. And if you've got really solid, you want to make sure it doesn't tilt forward or back, and it doesn't go side to side. Because if it does that when you're cycling and putting pressure on the wheels, that's going to be an uncomfortable.
Last thing you want is to be tipped off the back of the bike while you're cycling down the road.
So then, I mean, the other thing about the seat is you want to be able to adjust it at some point. If you're getting a numb seat when you're cycling, you might want to tilt it slightly forward or back to give yourself a more comfortable.
Yeah, everyone's different.
Ride.
So everyone's, the position of the saddle could be, adjusted to fit you individually.
Handlebars at the front. So one of the things to check with the bike, especially a new one or one you've not ridden for a while, is there any give? I'll hold the bike this side as well. So you put your knees on either side of the wheel.
Right. So I can actually turn this. So so that's actually now offline with the bike. So that's too loose.
So I'll go and get an Allen key.
So we would need to tighten this up. So to do that, what you would do is you would make sure that you got your. So if you loosen it a little bit, so you don't have.
Oh, that's too thick.
Yeah, get the right size one. Yeah. So you turn it lefty loosey. That's
There you
it.
go. So that's loose.
Yeah. Yeah.
More.
Okay. Yeah. And then give it a. Right. So that. Yeah. There you go.
Lefty
Right.
loosey, righty tighty.
Right. That's
Still
gone
works.
really loose now. There. Yeah. You see that moves really freely. So you can line it up with
So
the frame.
So it's lining that up
Yeah.
with the frame, so it's all in line, making sure the wheel's gripped between your
Yeah.
legs, and that's in line too.
Yeah, and then once you've set where you want it, then you can tighten it up again. If you can't undo this, quite often what we have to do, if you get a little hammer there, Linz,
Oops.
if you just when you've undone that that nut on the top there, if it's really not budging at all, give that a good whack, yeah, with a hammer, and that should. There's a cone inside the headset that grips. Yeah. That grips the handlebars in place, and that little cone is pulled up when you tighten the Allen key, so it's pulled up into the metal and jams it and wedges it against the inside. Yeah.
So we actually used a lubricant earlier on this because it was quite rusted. So
we do have to give it a good tap with a mallet to get this
really
one.
good tap with a mallet. Oops, put that in.
Yeah, that's it.
And then this is where you can use that metal bar there.
Yeah. So don't over tighten stuff. So you need to make sure it's not moving anymore, and then make sure, right, that's not moving, but don't really force it, because if you really force it, you put in quite a lot of pressure on the wheel.
Yeah.
So you don't want to bend your wheel. You know, you're putting so, you know, if you like, oh, I'm really big, I'm big and strong, I'm just going to make sure it's not going to move. So you push it so hard that you twist your wheel out of line. So it's just about making sure that you're getting it right.
So then we've got the seat. So we've done the seat and the handlebars. The next two things are your kind of like big safety. I mean, they're all part of being safe.
If we stick with the handlebars, let's stick with the furniture on the handlebars.
So it's a bit of a muddle around here, our furniture, but we've got brakes and we've got gears. So they're the next thing. So let's just start with the brakes.
Right. So this brake handle there looks.
Turn that
Yeah.
forward.
Can we
you
see that one? You could go to the close up there.
Yeah, let's go to here. We'll turn it all around. Let's bring it up. If you turn the block
Yeah, okay.
a bit further back, please. Is that all right then?
Okay, so if we see with this one here, this brake, what it's doing is it's one side's not moving at all, and the other side's moving all the way. So if I lift that front end up there, can you give the wheel a spin there, Linz?
Which one, the front one?
Yeah, just the front, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, so, hang on, we've got the bungee on there, take the bungee on, yeah.
While we're doing this, Ken was asking if you don't have a spoke spanner,
Yeah,
do you really need?
you don't need a spoke spanner, no, you
just
can
got
use a
one
pair of,
spoke to
you can use a
tighten.
pair of pliers, but the spoke spanner's nice because they're cheap tools, they're not very expensive normally. And it's quite fiddly getting a pair of pliers in to turn.
But you
Because
can use
sometimes,
pliers.
yeah, you can use pliers, yeah,
Go on then, brakes.
and you can use a little spanner. So right, so
Oh, that's good.
that stops the bike, all right, but then it's jammed on.
Yeah.
So that needs a little bit of maintenance, and probably what we need to do is just give it a bit of lubrication on the on this arm of the brakes there, because that's sticking there. Probably need to adjust the position of the pads as well, possibly replace the pads, and then maybe lubricate the cable on that. We're going to do a video for you on how to replace the brake cable, but we're not. I just want to say that quite a lot of the time, if you lubricate your brake cables and you look after them, they should last you quite a long time. And it's not entirely necessary to replace your cable every time it just sort of, it starts to stick a bit. If you can actually do a little bit of maintenance on it, you can actually get it all working again. So you don't necessarily need a new brake cable if it's sticking on. You might try lubricating it first and cleaning it and making sure it's in good condition. But it's the same process almost as replacing it anyway. If we're talking about the position, what you want is with your, really you want to be, if you're sitting on the bike and you're holding the handlebars, then really you should be able to reach those easily. I have to reach down for these because I've got quite short fingers. And I can't quite get down. It's quite a stretch to get down there. So if I had to do it in an emergency, it would be a little bit of I have to twist my arm over to grab hold of the lever. So that's in the wrong place. It should really be almost like an extension of your arm. So your arm comes down towards your handlebars, and then your brake lever will stick out underneath. The gear levers, if they're in the wrong place, that's loose, the gear lever as well. It's quite a good indication of where they're meant to be, because they normally have a little window or a little dial on them where you can see what gear you're in, and usually that should be pointing at, so you can see it. So this one here is pointing forwards. So that's in completely the wrong place.
So what, we just use an Allen key to loosen that?
Yeah, so there's an Allen key on the back there. I don't know if you're able to see that, like a little Allen key fitting there on the back. Is that one, will that one fit? It's one smaller than that, I think. It'll be a 3mm by the look of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's completely twisted around. You can see how the cable comes over the handlebar here and then goes under. So you got it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this particular cable is a little bit of a mess. So
just give it another little loosen. So Rachel was asking about Tristan, I haven't forgotten yours, I need to come back to that. Rachel was asking about disc brakes.
Disc brakes, right.
I don't know what they are. You have to.
Right, well, disc brake. We've got disc brakes on the other bike over there.
Ooh.
So yeah, there you go. That's it. Yeah,
that's it, like that. And then this one
a bit further over, actually. Yeah. So that's getting in the way of the brake lever now. So the brake lever needs to move now. So
I'll just keep doing that. Do you want to talk about what? So disc.
Yeah. So what's the question about disc brakes then?
I go to talk about.
Right. Well, we weren't going to cover them today in terms of the fix today, but there are a lot of brakes, a lot of disc brakes on a lot of bicycles. Many of the modern bikes do have disc brakes on. There's a number of different sorts of disc brakes. There's hydraulic ones for your really sort of high-end bikes, and there's cable driven ones. The cable driven ones are quite similar setup to the cable brakes here that we're going to do here. So you replace the cables in the same way, but it's how you adjust how you change the pads and the adjustments at the other end that would differ. I'll try and find some instructional videos on that for you, and we'll post those up online. Or I could go through our bike and we could make a little video on replacing those.
Something up there, that's a bit better.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Oops,
Oh, hang on, we got wrong here.
Oh,
that's the wrong way around.
I'll just do that. Would you want to talk about would you want to do that, or I'll go and get some questions?
Yeah.
The bike twisted round.
That's a rookie error there. Right. Okay.
Oh, and someone. So how do you replace cracked mud guards? Rosie's asking.
Now, funnily enough, we've got a cracked mud guard.
Do you know, it's funny, we've got a cracked mud guard on the thingy bike. What's it called?
The rally.
The rally bike. Yeah. And the rally bike's mud guard, it's plastic and it goes onto a metal frame. So actually, we were saying when we mix up we made some ugu last week, and actually that would be a really nice way to attach it back on.
Was it that one?
These the really little one there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can get the model and replace it back on, it's using the same sort of the ones on, there is no mud guard on this one, but the other bike, it's just like a little undoing the nuts and getting them off.
Yeah.
And then, but the problem with the one we've got there is it's cracked off the come away from the
bike. Yeah.
So we're just going to put a plastic fix on by using. You could use something like Subaru for that, but we were going to mix some or silicone sealant and leave it for a day.
Yeah.
And that would hold the two things back together.
Yeah, a plate inside and a plate outside, and then maybe drill a hole through the middle of it, and then put a bolt and put a nut on either side of it. That should all be. That's all fairly good. Yeah.
We're sort of speeding through these things because we want to sort of go through. So there's brakes, and then we're going to look at so this one needs doing, but we'll leave that for now. That needs to be brought up and lined up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
In place. We've got the pedals.
So
you would check the pedals. I know these are obvious things to check on pedals, but we often get bikes that come in with one pedal missing, or broken and that sort of thing. So are the pedals in place? It's worth knowing that pedals screw on. A left pedal is for the left side, so you want to make sure that the pedal that's going on the left side of the bike is the left pedal.
Don't try and force it in if it doesn't. If you try and put the left-hand pedal into the right-hand crank, then you will knacker the threads, and you'll be faced with a very horrible job trying to repair the damage to that. So you have to be quite careful about which pedal you put in which.
If you're, I was thinking about that mud guard. If it's cracked plastic, you can use something like araldite, which is a good to bond it back together. Araldite's a really good glue, like where you combine the two glues together and then bond that on and let it set. That's a really good glue to kind of give something a bit more sturdy. Yeah. And if you need to get it back onto the metal, that's where the Subaru goes, and that's got a bit more give. It might have a bit more play with it. So we are pedals. So pedals, you're just checking, making sure they're in good nick. Do they spin in their little sockets?
Need to turn nicely. And is there any play? So if I try and move the pedal towards the frame and away from the frame, is there any play in the bottom bracket, which could indicate that the bearings are worn in there? Are the ends here, are they loose? And do the pedals, do the actual cranks sit on the bottom, on the axle, the bottom bracket that runs through the middle? Do they sit nicely? They're not wobbling around? If they're wobbling around, it could be that you need to tighten up the screw on the inside. You would need a socket for that. It's a little bit quite a narrow socket, because you can't get a spanner in there. So underneath these little plastic caps, there's a very shallow nut that sits down inside a recess. It's a little bit tricky to get at. But
so we're going to spin the bike round so we can look at what I think in my head is the most complicated bit to fix of the bike, and that's the gearing system. So I don't know if you found like that the chain falls off your bike when you're cycling, or you might move it through the gears on the bike and it pops off one side or another, or it's crunching through the gears. And so it's one of the things that's really useful to know how to fix or adjust. And what I didn't know when I started doing fix-it things, that I didn't even know these screws existed in this part. So I grabbed a couple of screwdrivers so that you guys can just point to them. There.
Right, so we've spent a little bit of time before we started making sure this one's working correctly. So you can see that goes all the way to the top cog, all the way to your easiest gear, so the largest cog. It goes all the way down to the hardest one to pedal, which is the smallest cog.
So they call it the high gear, so that's the H, and it's marked as such on the. So this whole device down here is called the derailleur, and the derailleur basically means to derail. So it's like it's carefully moving, derailing the chain up and down the cogs as you go.
I'm disappointed. I thought it was going to be
Marcel Derailleur,
winning the Tour de France in 1937.
Okay, so at the back, I'm not sure how well you can see at the back of here, there's two screws, and these are your key screws. So with this cable here, which is the gear cable from the top, so when you're adjusting your gears from the handlebars, this is the wire that's taking it down to here. This bike has two of those because it's got 18 gears. The rally bike's just got 6. It just has this one cog here.
Oh, yeah, it's worth mentioning actually, if you're ever going to find chains or back sprockets or anything, when you're asking, when they ask you how many speeds is it, you don't go in and say it's an 18-speed bike. It's just the number of cogs that are on the back here. So count the number of cogs. So if you're going to get a chain, then you get a chain for how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you get a chain for a 6-speed cog.
Cool. So if you're finding that your chain is coming off the high gear at the bottom here, then you need to come in to fix it. So Maj is just going to show you with the, you got the right screwdriver there.
I've got the one.
You've got so just where you would tweak and adjust that, and then after that, just to answer the next person's question, we're going to look at bike punctures.
Bike punctures, right? Okay.
What we are going to do is we're going to make a little video that just runs through the fixes, that runs through how to tweak a gear system, because it just requires a little bit of fiddling, but we thought we'd make a special video about that just so you can see, because actually it's something really doable that everyone can do. It just, I think, rather than trying to do it today when we're just running through lots of different points, was too much.
I've done that too much there.
Oh yeah. So what the first thing you do when you have to adjust your gears is undo the nuts.
So you slacken it off and get some slack in the cable, really, because what happens with the twist grip at the end, when you turn it, it puts tension on the cable, and as it tenses the cable, it pulls this part of the derailleur backwards, and the effect of pulling it backwards is to push it towards the wheel of the bike, and that changes the gear, that jumps it or derails it from the gear it's in to the next gear up. So the first point of call you've got to get is to make sure with a little bit of slack on this cable. So you can do that using, there's like some adjusters at the end, or you can slacken it off here. You can slacken off the adjusters on your handlebars. This doesn't have them on this one, so you just got to do it at the bottom for this one. But on some bikes you have like this thing here, there's on the brakes there's an adjuster. Can we see that? Yeah, so there's a little adjustment there where you can adjust your so you can slacken off your cable, and then using the high one, you basically you move it up a gear into the next gear up. Oops. Yeah, I'm trying to get it onto the next one up. There you go. That's it. And then down again, and keep adjusting it until and make sure it doesn't go any further. If it comes off the end there, basically, which is, we've all had that happen to us at some time or other, then it's set too far. So you need to just tweak it a little bit. And you'll see, if you experiment a little bit with it, especially,
what we should have said is that it's worth wearing gloves when you do this job.
Yeah, I've forgotten to put my gloves on. So basically, you see, if you move, can we see that, Dan?
Yeah.
See, if I turn it this way, it comes outwards, comes this way. If I turn it clockwise, it goes in towards the bike wheel. So you can set the correct position for your derailleur to keep your chain on the right gear at the end, and make sure it doesn't jump off and get stuck. There's nothing worse than getting your chain stuck down that gap at the back of your bike. And likewise, once that's done, then you can tighten up your cable a little bit. Well, I might do, yeah, I'll see.
Okay, so the other thing to say about this is, well, we're down here talking about the chains and cogs, is we've actually got a little tray of things that you might want to use to clean up the chain. If you're cycling, like, you get a lot of dirty marks on your legs, if it just got really dirty and you need to clean it up, then there's a couple of things that you might need for a bit of chain maintenance. Or if and one is you might need some degreaser, paint onto the wheel. I'll get that actually down. I'll wait for you to finish that.
Yeah, well, that's actually sitting quite nicely. Can you see this one? Yeah, that's sitting quite nicely up at the top there. But if it's not reaching all the way up to the top, then it's either that you need to adjust the L screw at the back, so it doesn't quite reach all the way up. If it's going too far and jumping off, then you need to back it off a little bit. With this one, it's protected from going off the end of the cog by this plastic shield along the back of the back of the cassette there. That's the cassette, by the way. But this little thing here stops it from getting stuck down between the spokes, which is another nasty accident waiting to happen as well. So really, it's about these two screws here. And then there's a few other adjustments that you can do with this one, which sets your position, but that's a little bit more advanced with the.
So I think what we might do now is just show you, like, the cleaning the chain and the gear cogs, the tools. So if we pop them, sorry Dan, and put those. I'm just going to put them on the floor there so you can see them. Then we're going to move on to. I'll move this out of the way. Yeah, we're going to move on to punctures.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So, should just say, did we say about the frame? We made it out of 2x4, the bike stand, just so you could see what you could do. But so, if your chain is really dirty and you need to clean it, you need something that is a degreaser. You can't use soap and water; it won't work. And even if you get bike grease on your hands, soap and water is really hard to get off. Don't use this on your hands. But degreasing, you put in a little pot, like a bit of an old plastic bottle, and you paint it on. You paint it onto the chain with an old paintbrush. And once you've painted it across the chain and across the cogs, you can clean it off. Now with the chain, it probably we've got a couple of old toothbrushes here. It's a really good way of using up things that we can't recycle. They're really hard to recycle, toothbrushes, so finding a good use for them is excellent. And so you can use the toothbrushes, you can run the chain through them, you paint the degreaser on, run the chain through the toothbrushes to get it coated on.
There's a really dirty old chain here to
Oh, yeah.
demonstrate on.
Yeah, so you could run it through like so, wee, like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's like a brand new chain, and it's all nicely greasy
So
and lubricated.
that would be how you apply the degreaser, but it is basically a kind of petrol, this. If you didn't have something like this, you can use something like white spirit, or you can use white spirit, or I think even diesel might do it, but they're not very, you can actually get a biodegradable, environmentally friendly one. We just happen to have this left from many years of doing things, so, and it's barely been touched, but something like engine degreaser will work. Then when you've done that, and you can wash it with soap and water, clean it down and dry it, and then you can use something called wet weather chain lubricator, which is an environmentally friendly lubricator that you can put on your chain, and that will keep it lubricated. You can, if you use
moderately expensive, that's about
Yeah.
7 or 8 quid. That.
And the guy, if you can't afford that and you don't have that, but you do need to clean your chain, you can use the 3-in-1.
But you've got a sewing machine at home with and somebody's got some 3-in-1 oil
Yeah.
oil in the toolkit.
So you can use the 3-in-1 oil kit, and a push you could use 2-stroke, I believe.
Yes, 2-stroke apparently, 2-stroke additive, oil additive to
so see what you put in your like petrol streamers or generators. You can use a bit of that if you have that to hand, but don't use WD-40 because it won't lubricate the chain. But if you want to clean it up, if you're getting like me every summer, like dirty stains, chain marks down your shins, then this is the kit to use. Now we're going to move on to punctures. So I'm speeding along with these because we want to try and people have been asking also about punctures. Someone also asked while we get stuff out.
Yeah.
About squeaky brakes.
Squeaky brakes. Is this on the disc brake?
On the disc brakes, yes. I think it was Rachel. Was that on a disc brake?
It could well be, yeah.
Ooh, that's a good. Someone's asking them. Okay, so yeah, so we're gonna do flat tires now. So I think, can you see, Dan? So I'm gonna get
right.
the all important bike pump.
I have a number of damaged tires here. This one, we got a close up for this one. I'm just going to find where we've marked this on. Right, this one, this has suffered what's you can see here. There's a raggy looking hole on there, and that is actually a blowout. So that's what happens if your tire basically gives way catastrophically, and quite often with a loud bang. I mistakenly did that once in our hallway, and it's a really echoey spot, and it nearly deafened me. It was horrific.
Could you repair that though?
You can't repair this one. That puncture really, it's not worth trying to repair it. It'd be so difficult to try and get a patch to stay on there and basically hold the tire together. Yeah, I wouldn't really bother. You're better off with a new tire when you've done that. It wouldn't be safe to try and repair that one really. So that one goes for the bin. This one's got no valve in it, so it might be worth talking about valves. There's 2 different sorts of valves you're likely to come across. You've got your Presta valves here, which is on this one, and that has a weird little, like a little nipple on the end of there, and a little brass lug, and when you undo that to put the air in, and that allows the air to go in, or if you wanted to, you can push it down and let the air out of it. Then once you finish pumping it up, you can tighten that up again, and that locks the valve in place, and it shouldn't really
Get a little cap to them as well.
Yeah, put a little cap over the top of that, and that shouldn't let the air out. So that's the Presta valve. And this one has a Schrader valve, which is more like a car tire, really. So that's like, you quite often find these on mountain bikes, quite often find these on road bikes and races, but you do interchangeably get them on, you know.
Cool. So should we have a look at that one?
So let's pump this one up. Yeah. So we have a bike pump here, and our bike pump is it's equipped with holes to cover both types of valve. So we're going to put it in the larger one here. sort of slightly counterintuitively on this bike pump. It sort of pops on with this lever flat, and then you pop it up. Whereas I've always, in all of my years, I think they normally start off like that, and then you put them down. It just seems like a lot more. It seems a bit counterintuitive doing it the other way, but it's to be watched out. You know, to look out for, just in case. Do you want to give us some air in there,
Yeah,
Lynn?
I'll fill it up.
Yeah. So you can see the tyres filling with air here. Right. Okay, so I'm going to take this off the right, and then I'm going to listen around the tyre.
You can hear it.
I can hear it already. It's actually quite a large. So you
Put it up to the microphone.
Yeah, let's. In fact, you hear that? Yeah. So you can normally feel it. You can, if you run it past your cheek and do it inside and out, you have to do the inside too. So you might look a bit daft doing this, really, especially in the middle, outside your house. But if you listen out for it, you'll either hear it or you'll be able to feel it. If it's got, like, I can't hear that anymore, but I can just feel it on my cheek. So very, very lightly. So once you've found where it's coming from, you can. It sometimes helps if you wet your fingers ever so slightly. You can feel it a little bit better. It'll feel cold on your fingers. And when you found it, then you can mark it with a pen. We've got a Posca pen.
There, which is the best.
Yeah, I can mark it to this one here.
Cool. So what we've got is you could just use a Sharpie or
So
like
there's
a
our
normal marker pen, but we're using a Posca, so you can see it's nice and bright and red. So you make it wide, make the mark really wide, so you don't want this ink to get into the glue that we're going to put on there. Just
in case it interferes with it. So you make sure that your spot is right in the middle of the circle that you've drawn around it. So
and then what would you do next? You need to.
Right, it's good to leave just a little bit of air in. If it doesn't go completely flat, you don't need to get it completely flat to put a patch on. It actually helps if it's just got a little bit of air in it.
So I'm going to give you.
So we're going to put a little bit of rubber solution on there. So give it a good spreading around. Yeah, so you need to put as much rubber solution on as you got patch. So we're going to put quite a small patch on. So yeah. So this is where it's important to know where your hole is. If you lose your hole, if you lose your hole, then so I'm just gonna rub that around there. If you lose your hole, you can put a little bit of air back into the tire, and it should start to bubble up through the solution. So, but I'm quite confident we've got that in the right place. I always find the bike pump's a really nice place to leave the tire while it cures.
So do you just put it straight on then?
So you don't put it straight on. You've got to wait until this becomes slightly tacky. Now,
wait, you can see it bubbling slightly as well.
Can you? All right, okay.
Okay. So
is that right in the middle then, is it?
I think so.
Yeah.
So so we're going to leave that to tack slightly. So you want it to be so it's just tacky to the touch before you put the rubber on.
Don't let it dry completely.
No.
But you need to make sure it's bigger than the patch that you're putting on.
See the light. And then
so it's already, yeah.
Okay, so how do you need to cut that off, or do you
you can just tear these off really, and I'm just going to wait just a little bit longer. But basically it's got a little foil packet in there, foil on one side and paper on the other side. Are you catching that there? Yeah. So you just basically peel it off this side, peel the foil off, and then you stick the patch on with the paper over the top of the hole when it's ready. And then you can leave the paper on. The paper doesn't need to come off, but I tend to take it off just because I feel sometimes it might snag as you're trying to put the tire in. But it should be absolutely fine. You could even cut it closer to the actual edge of the patch, but make sure you don't cut off the very thin edges on the patch. Really, you want those to be ready. There are patches now that you can just stick straight on, so you can clean up your rubber, and you can stick the patch straight onto the wheel. There's self-adhesive ones that you can get now.
You're going to stick
you don't need the rubber.
I'm
thinking it might just need it. Yeah, I think it might be all right actually. Yeah, I think we'll go with that.
So you were saying that you can leave the paper on, but if you wanted to take it off, you should work from the middle out. Is that right?
Yeah, don't try and peel it from the edge. So, right. So I'm going to stick that on.
Doing this for speed, so who knows if we'll be going, that's not where the hole is.
Yeah, right. I was watching. Yeah. Right, okay. So smooth it out from the middle to the edges. Yeah, and we used to sort of like scrape it, and then eventually it sort of, you can see the paper starts to come away, and you can peel the paper off from the middle outwards.
But not from, because if you peel it from the edge.
But if you peel it from the edge, what happens is you'll see it might be all right actually. Yeah, you can see it's just lifting up the edge of the patch there. Sometimes you can do it without doing any damage, but it's
better to just spend that time scraping it off from the center.
But really, the most important part of the patch is really the edge where you get a good seal there.
So that's
so
the basic of putting it on. So once you've fixed so what we're going to show you lastly, really, while we're taking questions and chatting to you, and I'll feed in some more of the questions, is how do you get the tire out, and how do you get the tire out? Sorry, the tube out, and how do you put it back in again once you've when you've got a flat, or if you just have to replace it. Like in this case, it's a very old. We've actually had it out already today.
Yeah.
The tube's really old. It's been repaired twice already, so we're just going to replace it.
It's quite knackered, so we will.
A brand new tube.
So if you're going to take your tire off, like this one will almost come off by hand. This one, but we've got some tire levers here. These are quite good quality ones. They weren't expensive. They were under £4 for a set of 3. So these are really nice, and they're designed so that you've got a nice blunt end on them, so you're not going to make a hole in your tire when you're trying to get it off. Because if you have got a new tire in there and you just happen to have gone over a thorn, 10 minutes down the road from your house, and you've got a puncture, the last thing you want to do is put another puncture in your brand new tire, really, because otherwise you'll be spending a fortune on tires. So it's a nice neat end on these, which allows you to get underneath the bead. The bead's this like metal, this sort of stiff bit along the bottom of the tire there. So these things, whoops, that's popped out there. So you get these underneath here, and then you can clip them on to the spokes.
If you don't have one of those?
If you don't have one of those, you can do it the old-fashioned way, which is a couple of spoons out the cutlery drawer. So when you're trying to get the tire off, what you want to do is you want to take off, you want to wedge out the bead from the rim, but you don't want to do it so far away that so if I start over here and I do this here, what we end up with is a bit that's still in the middle there. So what you should do is get just far enough away, so when you lever out the bead from the rim, you see it kind of continues the process. And there you go, the spoons can tuck behind the spokes as well.
So Stella was asking, and this is funny because this is exactly the same thing that I asked Maz when we were learning about puncture repair, is what about the bowl of water, Maz?
What about the bowl of water? Right. The bowl of water is really good when
in the summer.
Yeah, well, in the summer when it's nice and warm, and you want to teach children about how to fix punctures. But
because mostly when you're out and about, you won't have a bowl of water.
Bowls of water are perfect for finding really tricky leaks. So if your tire goes down, eventually, like if your tire's always going down, but you can't hear a puncture, you can't see a puncture, but when you bump it up, it's still going down after leaving it in the garage for a week or so. You might be that you've got a really tiny hole. The only way of finding that really is to probably put it in a bowl of water. But it's a sort of like, it's more of a specialist tool really, rather than a. So it's a specialist tool. So if you carry on doing that, so the bowl of water is brilliant, but also if it's cold, it takes a long time to dry your tire. You end up with a wet tire, and you have to dry it off before putting the patch on
and that sort of stuff. But it is a really great way to kind of get you to understand how the tire is working, and if it's coming out of the valve and stuff like that. You can. They do recommend it in the manual. Spit on the holes to see where they are, or on the valve. On the valve, actually, it doesn't work so well with the Presta valves, but with the Schrader ones, it's quite common. Put a little bit of spit in the valve. You don't have to do it now, and you can see it bubbling up with the air. So you fill it with air and put some spit in it, and then if it's still bubbling with air it's broken. So there are kits to fix valves as well. You can tighten up the valve. Sometimes your valve's loose, and you can tighten it up. So there's special tools to get inside the valve. Or you could just replace it. They're very cheap to do. So I'll let you carry on doing this. So let's carry on. Yeah. So once you've levered it in, you're going to move the spoon or the tire lever around gently to get half of the tire off the rim. Yeah. So it's hanging over like that. So half on, half off. And then once you've got that done, you're going to go to the valve.
So you can get your fingers all the way around on the inside
nice
there.
and loose. So you don't want to take the whole thing off.
If you have had a puncture, just be careful, because if you've got a piece of glass
or a nail,
if you've got a piece of glass or a nail in the tyre there, then,
but you want to check where that is as well. But you want to be careful with your fingers. Do a visual check as well if you know what you went over. So you're finding the valve.
So where's our valve?
It's down the bottom there.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're finding the valve for the inner tube.
Yeah. And what you do is you can lift it up into the tyre and then pop it out over the side, and then you can withdraw your tyre
and just
out to the side
So
here.
carefully do it, because you know you might it might be repairable, so you don't want to add extra.
You don't want to tear it out.
So this tyre we've seen has been replaced, has been fixed a couple of times before it was abandoned or stolen and abandoned. I'm not quite sure.
Abandoned, I think.
To this one. And
so
it does have a hole in, so we're gonna replace it with a new tyre, which is another question.
It's got a double hole there, which actually we had one, didn't we, with a double hole, didn't we?
Yes, we did. So double hole is where someone's ridden it over probably a curve with not enough air in, and you've got a double hole. So that's where that's
where you've got two patches on there. Is actually what's happened is there's not enough air in it. What it does is your rim collides with the curb. And it punctures two little holes in either side of it. So that's a sign that they've been riding it up curbs without enough pressure in the wheel.
Somebody asked me, and that's a really good question, which is, how do you know what inner tube to get for your bike? And it's back to the old tyre.
Back to the tyre info.
The tyre will tell you what inner tube to get. So see if I can. I'm not sure if you can see it on the other side.
I think it's on the other side there.
Yeah. So the tyre has all the information. It's brilliant. I didn't know this till last year. It's like hanging around at Fix It. You find out all these things. So somewhere on this tyre, it will tell you the size of the tyre, tell you where it's made. Or maybe it was the other side. Try and find it. I read it before. Oh, it doesn't tell you this time.
Does it not?
It was on the other one, because I've just read it.
All right, okay.
So oh no, here it is, just a bit worn off. There it is. So it tells me on here that the tyre is 27 by 1/4 inch. So that's there on this tyre.
So that measurement is from rim to rim.
The other tyre must be newer. So the other tyre on the other has another measurement on as well, which says 32 to 630. So then you've got two different tyres. This one's actually in worse condition than the other one, so it must have been. So it's an older one. But that tells you the size of the tyre. And if I look at the box, I don't know if you can see that down there. So it says 28 inches on the tube, but if I look down into the detail, it's telling me that it's a 27 by 1/4 inch, and it also says 32 by 360, which I believe is the distance. Is that right?
Yeah,
it's the distance between the metal rims, so it's giving you the tire size. So and just like the most useful thing is to have your phone or to write it down and take that into the bike shop, and they'll be able to advise you. And of course, you can also tell them what type of bike you have too, if you're not sure. Sometimes just having that extra information is there. So we've got the tyre out.
Yeah, quite often they'll ask you what sort of bike it is. The amount of times I've been in bike shops to buy things, and they go, "What sort of bike is it?" And I'm like,
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
But as long as you know the rim, that's the width of the rim, because obviously and also the other good thing about just to say it again, I think, is that the pressure for the tyre is also written, it's often written, we're going to replace it on the tyre itself, and it definitely is in the other one. So what we're going to do is get this rubber out, this new rubber out, and put it in. It's all lovely and new. So we have to take.
So you've got a little.
So there's the protection cover on there, and then there's also this what's it called, placement.
It's like a collar, isn't it? Yeah.
Collar that goes. You want to take that off because you're going to put that on. Because
that'll hold the valve in place. Hold the valve.
Push it through. You've got the valve hole there.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
So we're going to put that in. This is basically a reverse procedure of what we've just done. You could inflate it a little bit before you put it in if you want. Sometimes that makes it easier.
It is really helpful, actually.
So we could. Do you want to put some air in?
Yeah, put a little bit of air in. Yeah, just a little. Yeah, you don't want to put a lot in, but.
Not sure how good our stagecraft is doing. Right, so we're just going to open that up first.
Yeah, no, it
down then.
Starts down. Yeah. So undo your.
Turn it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Put that in place.
So you need to put some pressure on the back end of it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And then if you can lever that up, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So we're just going to put a little bit of air in.
Ooh, no, we haven't got. I
Oh,
don't think it's quite undone enough yet.
so better to take that out.
Yeah, no, should be okay. It's not the best bike pump in the world, this one. There you go.
So it's just like a pump and a half, like not loads, just to
Yeah, if you've got, you don't want to inflate it really. What you want to do is just put enough air in to stop it from getting twisted. Yeah, so pull it off here. Yeah, it's really awkward.
Okay, so that's gone in. I'm just going to put this collar in place. If you slightly overinflated it, it's very easy with these valves to let the air out.
You can just tighten the little end on it.
Yeah, okay, so that's just keeping it in place, and then if you want to go through putting it in, that's so.
Right, okay, so you need to make sure that the bead is seated underneath the rim there. So make sure it's the rim's all in on one side there. It's quite hard when you get like an old tyre like this, and then you basically you work your way around with the tyre. And
so I've got a really good question for you to think about while you're doing that. So Tristan has asked, and he asked quite early on, and I was waiting for a little gap. He has a wheel with an electric hub, and the spindle. I know the spindle won't fit into a fork gap where the spindle is seated. Is it possible to file down the gap in carbon forks to make it fit? There's only a couple of. He's only got a couple of millimeters. He only needs a couple of millimeters to do it. I feel like that's a conversation that you and Maz might like to have over Messenger.
I think I'd like to see a photograph of the I
can tell by the "ooh" that was said that he's deeply interested, wants to see photos, and would like to know more about it.
I think if it's filing into carbon fiber forks, I think just because they'll be stress tested, there'll be enough material either side of where the wheel goes through. But if you're talking about millimeters, you maybe all right. I think it's relative to how much actual material there is there. So if you've got a really tiny amount of material either side of the hub, then you don't want to take too much of that away. But if you've got quite a large amount, then it shouldn't make too much difference.
So are you just easing that in? So you put that round and you're easing the tyre back round on the frame? Yeah, so I'm just going to go around, keep putting it all in now. So now this is actually the back wheel. So if you had a chain on your bike, you'd need to, I think what we'll do is video how we put it back on the bike and then how it fits with the chain. There actually is no chain on this bike.
So coming back around to where the valve is here, because this is quite important really. So you need to make sure that so I'm going to undo that a little bit and push the valve up into the tyre. So you need to make sure that where the valve is, there's like a plate on the top of it. You need to make sure that's above the hole. Yeah, well, you need to make sure that it's above the level of the bead, and the bead sits into the rim of the bike there. If you screw it down tightly to the rim there, then you won't be able to get the bead either side of it. The bead's got to go underneath, so it's got to come around under. So it's best to, I'll just demonstrate that again. It's best to give it a little bit of slack and push that up into the tyre, and then make sure your tyre is seated around it. Otherwise, you can end up with that ubiquitous lump over. When you have a tyre that has a bump in it. And
so there's a couple of other extra questions, and we're definitely going to show you how to put this back onto the wheel, especially I think the back wheels are a bit more complicated.
That's actually gone back in. The whole wheel has gone back in without needing to use the spoons or the.
It's quite an old tyre. It's very soft. So if you had a new tyre, or the big thick mountain bike tyres are much harder. So just before pumping, because you've only got like 1 minute and or a couple of minutes to go, we've got like 3 lovely questions that I'd like to put out to you, Maz. And the first is from Rachel. There's another one, Rachel. Oh, it might be a different Rachel. But is it a good investment to put slime in the tyres?
I've heard it's not. I think it's one of those things where. I've heard it's one of those things where where once it's in, I mean, it might save you from having the odd puncture. I'm gonna say there's probably a lot of debate on it. I can imagine that it's, you know, for convenience sake, it's really nice to have like your have your wheels stay up. But once it's in there, it's difficult to do anything else with that tire. And if you have to replace it, you have to replace the whole thing.
Egg in your radiator.
So yeah. I don't know. I'm a bit out on that one. I haven't tried it, and I don't know how convenient it is.
And Alistair was asking. Alice is asking, is there any way to stop open tubes of rubber glue from drying out? Now that's been open for a while, that rubber liquid.
Yeah, I would say clean the top of it, make sure the cap's clean. And I think the other thing with tubes of rubber glue to stop them from drying out is be very careful when you're squeezing the rubber out of them, not to sort of not to break because I think what happens is the metal gives way. And I think if you get a little tiny hole in the metal, then doesn't matter whether your cap's on tight or not. But as long as your top of your glue is really clean, and it's clean on the inside of there, and it's on nice and tight, it shouldn't ever go off.
Brilliant. So this is actually just 1 minute over the hour. And we've got one, and I'm going to say thank you to Festival Thrift for having us as ever, and Fix It
Adam's video
at Fix It Fortnight. We've got a video of about a Dr. Bike video with Adam Pugh talking about Cycling UK, and that program comes up onto the site after we finish today. And we're going to put some fixes, some kind of like how to don't burst it on the camera, that would be too traumatic. We're going to put on some like how to adjust your gears, how to put the wheels back on when you've taken them off. I think that's quite a useful one. And then Donna,
and we'll cover we'll do a little video on replacing the pads in the disc brakes as well.
Cool. And then lastly, Donna was asking, I'm just going to ask, and we might have to answer this on an email after Donna, but is there any way of prolonging the life of your tires? I have a vague memory of my dad chalking our tires when I was small, but maybe that was just to keep the tires white. We used to use chalk to, we used to use chalk to mark the punctures. I remember that. But,
do you know, I think that's something really interesting to look at. I think probably the way you'd be able to keep them good for the longest is probably not to have them out in the sunshine, and not to leave them out in the weather, not to let them frost. So if you can put your bike under cover somewhere in a shed, it's going to last a little bit longer.
Get a bike cover for it, and then also the type of tire you have. So if you're using your bike every single day, or if you have a teenager that likes to do skids down the path and they're cycling into school every day, like we ended up investing in Kevlar tires. So we had tires that just lasted a lot longer, and it's like a bulletproof vest that stops you from driving. So sometimes it's about the material, but that's kind of like because he wasn't spending money on bus fare, so we could spend money on tires. So that's how that worked. Thank you so much. As ever, ask questions, ask us on Fix It. Tristan, I think we'll definitely get back to you, message us some pictures. I think that camera just went off, didn't it? Yeah. Hopefully we're live on the right camera. I think it's... Yeah, but thank you again, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you at the Festival of Thrift this year. Fingers crossed, everyone, and see you in September. Okay. That's right. Oh yeah, put your fixes on. Fix and fail.